start, Mitch Kelman, who is our the chair of the Landmarks Preservation Commission, has a conflict on one of the projects and has recused himself from today's meeting. Because of that, I will be chairing the meeting today. So given that, after that, I will do the first order of business, which is introducing the commission members. Taylor, could you go through and just call people's names so we have a proper order and know that we're getting everybody?
Sure. Rob?
Rob Brennan, District 1.
Phoebe?
Phoebe Evans Latosha, executive appointment.
John? John, you're muted.
John Holman, unmuted, but Council District 5. Thanks.
Perfect. Perfect. Scott?
Scott Holupka, Planning Board Rep.
Ed?
Ed Horde, executive appointment.
Wendy?
Wendy McIver, District 3.
Ray?
Ray Scott, District 7.
And Chris?
There we go. Thank you. Chris Weston, District 2.
Perfect. And with staff tonight, we have myself and Caitlin Merritt, who's our Preservation Services Chief, as well as Steve Lafferty, who is the Director of the Department of Planning, is joining us tonight. And we are grateful to have all of our call-in users as well. And with that, back to you, Ed.
Okay, the next order of business. Hold on, I'm losing my chair. The next order is to have a Pledge of Allegiance. Can we all stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance? Are we ready? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United
States of America, and to the republic
for
which
which
it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I cannot find my list of operating, the blurb I'm supposed to read. It seems to have vanished from my computer.
That is okay. I can read it on your behalf just so that we have it.
Okay.
Here we go. So everyone just pretend that this is Ed reading it. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the meeting of the Baltimore County Landmarks Preservation Commission is now in session. Please note this meeting is being audio recorded. As Ed already stated, Mitch Kelman, our commission chair, could not be in attendance tonight, so Ed will be chairing in the meantime. This is your volunteer representatives appointed by County Council and County executives and entrusted to monitor renovations and additions to our Baltimore County historic resources. The Commission reviews and approves nominations to the Baltimore County Preliminary Landmarks List and comments on National Register nominations, and is charged with evaluating submissions to the Baltimore County Historic Tax Credit Program that encourages appropriate maintenance and renovation of designated historic properties. We've already done our commissioner introduction and our Pledge of Allegiance. So the Landmarks Preservation Commission operates under the authority, standards, and requirements of Title VII, Article 32 of the Baltimore County Code. They refer to the United States Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation as administered by the National Park Service. This is the accepted national standard for historic preservation projects. Our own Baltimore County Historic Preservation design guidelines directly reference and incorporate the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. We have important preservation issues to discuss and debate at each meeting. If you would like to make comments, please limit your comments to the specific preservation submission being reviewed. We ask for your assistance and understanding so that discussions do not digress. As an additional comment, we can all agree that historic preservation is an important aspect of the quality of life and place that makes Baltimore County unique. As a commission, we seek to recommend significant buildings and places for landmark consideration to the County Council for their final vote. As commissioners, we serve on the commission due to our expertise, interest, and passion for historic buildings and places, and review submissions based solely on their merit. While we may disagree in discussion and voting, we continue to be a collegial body that respects each other both personally and professionally.
Thank you, Taylor. The next order of business is are there any changes to today's agenda? Taylor?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Before we go into consideration of changes to the agenda, I would just like to have a staff reminder of the LPC review. As a note, the commission received all of the meeting materials 1 week ago, and the information presented in this slideshow is purely visual to keep the meeting moving along. And with that, if anyone would like to offer comments during the meeting, you'll see that you can do so using the chat box. You can select host and send your comments over, and staff will read the comments on your behalf, or you can use the raise hand button. I know we have a lot of folks interested in the public hearing that we're having tonight, so feel free to use either of those to chat. And with that, there are no changes to the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Before we get started, I want to just remind people that we have a very, very full agenda tonight. It's long. It's got a lot of odd items which are going to take a while. So I would ask first the commissioners to focus and be very direct and succinct in what you're saying, and try to minimize your time, but do what we need to do. But to just focus on the issues and be direct about what you're saying. For the folks in the audience, if you're going to make comments, we're going to limit the amount of time that we have to 2 minutes, and we will be strict about that. We will mute you after the 2 minutes is up. So we'll give you a 15-second warning, 15 seconds before your 2 minutes is up, but make sure that you're focusing on items that have to do with historic preservation when you're speaking. And please, if other people have said what you're saying, don't repeat it. We don't need to hear it a lot of times. Those of you who have presented a letter, we've read the letters. They're in our package, so we've seen those. Okay. Let's see. The next item is the minutes of the meeting. Do we have anyone have any comments, changes, or suggestions for the minutes? Hearing none, can I have a motion for approval?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes.
I second, Rob Brennan.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? Well, in that case, let's do a roll call, Taylor.
Sure. Scott?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Phoebe? I think that was a yes.
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Vince?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
And Ed?
Yes.
Perfect. That motion carries.
The next order of business are the consent agenda items, number 5, 7, and 10. Taylor, do you want to discuss those?
Sure. First, we have agenda item number 5. This is the Stuthman property at 119 Smithwood Avenue in Catonsville. It's a contributing structure in the Old Catonsville National Register Historic District. The proposal is part to approval for the in-kind replacement of a fiberglass roof. Staff's recommendation is to vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, roofs, page 7 and 10, County Code section 11.2.201. Next, we have agenda item number 7. This is the Hisley property at 1507 Bologna Avenue in Lutherville. It's a contributing structure in the Lutherville County Historic District, MIP number BA334. The proposal is the replacement of an existing wood privacy fence with a wooden 6-foot board and batten fence, and part to approval for an HVAC installation. As a note, commissioners, the meeting materials that you received did reflect that the site plan says the existing fence is over the property line. The homeowners are aware of this. However, the commission does not comment on zoning issues, which was why we felt comfortable leaving this on the consent agenda. They're aware of that for future reference, though. Staff's recommendation is to vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness for both projects, citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, Fences and Landscape, page 4, National Park Service Technical Preservation Services Preservation Brief number 24, Heating, Ventilating, and Cooling Historic Buildings, Problems and Recommended Approaches, and County Code sections 327403 and 112201. Finally, we have agenda item number 10. This is the Nobhan property at 1722 Kurtz Avenue in Lutherville. It's a contributing structure in the Lutherville County Historic District, MIP number BA344. The proposal is part 2 approval for the in-kind repair and replacement of wood siding as necessary and exterior repainting. Staff's recommendation is to vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness, citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, Facade Materials, pages 211 and 12, and County Code section 112201.
Do I have is there any discussion on the consent agenda?
I move we accept all the items as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Anyone want to pull anything or want to discuss anything further? Taylor, could we have a voice vote on this?
Sure. Scott?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Phoebe?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Oh, Steve. Hi, Steve. Steve? We'll come back to Steve. Vince?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And Steve, you there? Steve Meyer?
Yes.
Perfect. There we go. Now we got it.
Motion passes. All right. The first agenda item is item number 4, the Bosley Mansion and Grounds setting Presbyterian Homes of Maryland property.
Yes, so this is agenda item number 4, Bosley Mansion and Grounds and Setting. It's the Presbyterian Home of Maryland property located at 400 Georgia Court in Towson. It's MIP number BA97, and this is a public hearing on the nomination to the preliminary landmarks list. The nomination was submitted by Preservation Alliance of Baltimore County. As stated, this property is owned by Presbyterian Home of Maryland. The structure is currently vacant and was previously occupied by the Presbyterian Home Retirement Nursing Home Facility. This structure was originally nominated back in 2016, but the nomination was pulled in 2018 following a memorandum of understanding between the developer and the community. The nomination has now been resubmitted, and I will turn things over to Ms. Caitlin Merritt, our Chief of Preservation Services, for a presentation on the structure, nomination, and staff recommendation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. The nomination for the Bosley Mansion and Grounds was submitted by the Preservation Alliance of Baltimore County, as Taylor already stated, for the following criteria. Criteria 1, association with an important person, Dr. Grafton Bosley. And criteria 2, as a distinctive example of a particular architectural style, particularly the Second Empire style. Just a note on evaluations and typical procedures for processing landmark nominations. And this process is conducted for all nominations. Qualified staff will conduct additional research beyond the information that's presented in the nomination in order to determine the significance and historical integrity of the nominated property and review the justifications presented in the submitted nomination form. And in this case, the Preservation Alliance's nomination form. For evaluating and applying the landmark criteria, staff and commission utilize the Secretary of Interior standards, how to apply the National Register criteria for evaluation, which is outlined in the Landmark Preservation Commission's historic guidelines and regulations, which are available on the LPC's webpage. To be eligible, a property must demonstrate significance in the terms of one or more of the 5 broad criteria and must also retain physical integrity to convey that significance. Historic integrity is based on 7 aspects as defined by the National Park Service, which are location, setting, design, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. essentially meaning that properties must not be substantially altered since a person lived there, and architecturally significant properties must retain the majority of the features that characterize their type. The Bosley Mansion, or as it once was called Highlands, is presently the central portion of the larger complex known as the Presbyterian Home of Maryland. The present structure is a result of at least 6 major alterations that happened after its construction in 1869. It was originally constructed for Dr. Grafton Marsh Bosley in the Second Empire style. The property served as a residence for the Bosley family and later the Abbott family until 1922. Major changes occurred to the house and property between 1922 and 1929 with the subdivision of the land for the development of the Southland Hills neighborhood and the Presbyterian Home of Maryland's purchase of the property. Some of the most noted changes included the reorientation of the site on its present 4.5 acre property, relocating the primary facade from its original location on the east elevation to its present location on the south elevation. The addition of the 2-story classical revival portico on that new primary facade. In addition, the roads and entrances from the Bosley and Offutt eras were covered as a result of the primary facade change and site reorientation, and new entrances were created with a looping drive on the south side of the property, with the addition of stone entrance markers containing a plaque that reads Presbyterian Home of Maryland. After 1929, the mansion underwent several alterations during the Presbyterian home's occupation, which has resulted in its present-day appearance. Several additional wings and expansions would follow the decades to come. Problems with the site led the owners of the Presbyterian home to explore other space for relocation and expansion, which resulted in a formal move in 2016, and the structure has been vacant since. The property on which the Presbyterian home sits was once part of the inherited land holdings of Dr. Grafton Marsh Bosley, comprising parts of the Gunners Range and James Meadow land tracts. The property had originally been acquired by Bosley's uncle, Dr. Grafton Marsh, in 1825. Dr. Marsh died unexpectedly, and a few months after his acquisition and were inherited by his brother, Dr. Josiah Marsh. Dr. Josiah Marsh and his wife had no children and consequently named several nephews as heirs, including Grafton Marsh Bosley in his 1850 will. Dr. Bosley inherited a bulk of the estate, which included several hundred acres that comprised of both the Marsh Farm in Towson and an upper farm in Delaney Valley. The original Marsh Farm in Towson included a large stone house that was situated on the northern part of the property facing Joppa Road. The family cemetery was situated nearby on the north side of Joppa Road. It can be seen on the 1876 atlas, as you see on the slide. The house was sold to Bishop Parrott in 1890. After his uncle's death and resulting inheritance, Dr. Bosley likely lived in that house with his wife Margaretta, whom he married in 1857 before constructing the large mansion in 1869. Records refer to that farm as Highlands Farm. In addition to being a doctor, Grafton Bosley was also a farmer. Shortly after he took over his uncle's farm, he constructed multiple farm accessory structures. In an article in the Sun dated in 1859, noted a barn fire, mentioned a new corn crib, and the various farming equipment that was also destroyed, together with some 40 bales of corn, agricultural implements, hay, grain, which were all burned. The whole loss was estimated at $2,800, on which there was an insurance in the Hartford Company of $800. The 1860 agricultural census also notes an extensive farm operation that existed on Dr. Bosley's farm. By 1870, the agricultural census reports a significant reduction in crop yield and less value of livestock and farming implements. This is likely due to the fact that the new Highlands mansion was situated on land formerly used for farming. In addition to his interest in medicine and farming, he was also closely involved in local institutions and politics that evolved in response to Towson's official establishment as the county seat of Baltimore County in 1851. Bosley's first venture into development in Towson came with the conveyance of land for the construction of the Oddfellows Lodge in 1852. He was instrumental in the establishment of the lodge and was an active member throughout his lifetime. Dr. Bosley donated lots for the construction of the new courthouse and the Towson jail, both constructed in 1855. With Towson and Bosley's parcel as the choice for the new county seat, as a result, a wave of improvements to housing and transportation followed. Each successive wave was aided by the most accessible type of transportation available. The York Turnpike Railway Company formed, and they had cars running by August 20, 1863. This greatly improved the commute to Baltimore from Towson and made it easier for people to move outside of Baltimore City. Most of the land around the courthouse that was owned by Bosley was acquired by Enos Smedley, who would end up being credited as the one who was largely responsible for the commercial development of the area. After the Towson courthouse opened in 1857, development picked up, and it wasn't just public buildings and commercial buildings that followed. The demand for residential housing in the Towson area also significantly increased. Included in among the new improvements in Towson was an impressive new home called Egbert Vale, designed by actor John Owen in 1868 by the architectural firm of Nearsey and Nielsen in the Second Empire style. Following on its heels in 1869 was Dr. Bosley's new house called Highlands, also in the Second Empire style. Each development of Towson featured its own distinctive architectural style. The size of lots and building technology also influenced the choices made and how the buildings were situated. When constructed, both Egbert Vale and Highlands featured a design that included a mansard roof, which was most associated with the Second Empire period. It was considered to be very modern because the style imitated the latest French building fashions made popular during the reign of Napoleon III. Various Parisian exhibitions helped spread the style to the United States, where it was very popular in the Northeast. As you can see in the 1876 Hopkins Atlas, 1891 plat, and the 1898 Bromley Atlas, that the original house faced east and its carriage road was accessed by Chesapeake Avenue, and it led to a circle driveway in front of the main house. The general form of the house is depicted as well, however, it's not a true representation. What you can tell is that it was either rectangular or square footprint with a rear addition. The 1891 plat depicts the house in the form that most likely resembles the form of the house at that time. The rest of the plat shows additional development plans by Bosley, which never happened, which is evidenced by the 1898 Atlas. Bosley was instrumental in the first wave of suburban development of Towson and the creation of lots of sale, many of which were situated north of Highlands. And shortly before Bosley's death in 1901, the estate was sold to Colonel Milton Offutt and his wife Emily Jenkins Offutt. Colonel Offutt was a notable attorney and businessman, and was very involved with Towson affairs, including his dealings as a lawyer for the United Railways Company. Shortly after purchasing Highlands, Offutt died suddenly, leaving behind his wife and 2 young children, for whom this estate was held in trust. Mrs. Offutt married again in 1905 to her late husband's brother, Towson banker Thomas Offutt. The family divided their time between the estate and their residence in Baltimore City. The image on the slide is a plat from 1900 that was part of the deed to Colonel Offutt upon his purchase of the property. It depicts a large garage, tool shed, ice house, a frame shed, and the chicken house. The only surviving outbuilding from this era appears to be tool shed. The Offutt family had a very lively and prominent social life and often entertained family and friends at Highlands. a feature in the January 21st, 1906 edition of The Sun titled "Attractive Specimens of Suburban Architecture depicted Highlands, the residence of Mr. Thomas Offutt." It portrayed a grand structure that faced east toward Towson. This is the earliest photo that could be found depicting the original appearance of the house. And some elements of its original facade can be seen, though a majority of them have been covered by later additions, like the 3 roof dormers on this elevation, whereas the other roof slopes have 2, and some of the larger paired windows on the side. The 1915, the 1915 Atlas of Baltimore County depicts one of the frame accessory structures in a house with its primary facade looking east. The wide carriage drive is depicted as having 2 points of access from Chesapeake Avenue, with a large circular drive located east of the main entrance. The west access road most likely was a service drive. In 1918, tax records noted the assessed value was $9,100 for the main structure at Highlands, along with a large garage. Plats drawn for the Offutt estate of the property in the 1920s also depict the structure's main entrance facing east, with a small projecting porch on the southern facing elevation and another on the western or rear wing. After Thomas Offutt died suddenly in 1920, the family decided to sell the property to developer J. Elmer Weishaupt in 1922 for $40,000. The Weishaupt family retained the dwelling for themselves until the rest of the land could be carved into lots for his proposed cottage community. A survey of the property was done prior to Weishaupt's purchase of the property. Still depicts the eastern facing facade, long circular driveway, garage, and tool shed. During this time, when Weishaupt occupied the house, it is most likely that the primary facade was moved from its original location on the east elevation to its present location on the south elevation. It makes sense that this was done at the time as a result of the subdivision to reorient the site so the house was centrally located on its new 4.5 acre lot as a way to attract potential buyers. Like their 19th century counterparts who flocked north of Baltimore City on trains, when streetcars and automobiles arrived, many residents looked further north of the city when it came to finding new communities in which to live. Development that had been creeping north on York Road for decades continued at a rapid pace as former estates were subdivided into the denser communities that benefited from the public water and sewer systems. Weishaupt formed the Southland Company after acquiring the property, involving the Roland Park Company with the initial subdivision of the property was a smart business move for him, as they had a great deal of experience and success with the development of restrictive home sites in the Baltimore area. They typically hired firms, including the Olmsted brothers, to lay out the streets and sidewalks, along with managing the utility installation and drainage location within the development. But design and use were dictated by restrictive covenants. A drawing of the house appeared in an advertisement for Southland Hills in 1925, which depicts the 2-story portico for the first time on the south elevation. In addition, a side gable wing was added to the east elevation. So it appears the dormers that are shown in this photo were never added. Marketing. The Southland Hills community and many other suburban subdivisions could be tricky in a time when no building regulations existed. The Southland Company was fortunate to have the large lot within the proposed community under their control. Incorporating the mansion into the development design was something given a priority by the developers. In a letter to Towson-based property surveyor William Whitney, the trust company communicated their interest in having the survey altered to include the estate's building locations in order to see how the property could be laid out for development purposes without interfering with the main house. Having purview over this parcel also helped avoid a use that might prejudice the sales of the rest, since a commercial building was often considered a nuisance in a residential community and threatened the value of the surrounding homes. If some of the initial buyers used their lots in an offensive way, if they built houses up to the property line, or a bad design or off color, the subdivider might have trouble selling the remaining lots. In the case of Southland Hills, the developer used this fact as a marketing tool to attract buyers to the neighborhood. In the heart of Southland Hills, Towson, in the very heart of Southland Hills, in the midst of a 5-acre open tract, a tract which will be kept open and untrammeled, is situated this beautiful old colonial home, lending its atmosphere of dignity and charm to all the properties adjacent. Just like their residential counterparts, many institutions were also looking north of the city to relocate. Among them were schools, churches, and homes for orphans and the aged who all had outgrown their Baltimore City locations. The Presbyterian Home of Maryland was one of those institutions looking to expand to new facilities. The Presbyterian Home was established as part of an overall 19th century movement that saw many religious-based benevolent institutions finding ways to assist their less fortunate elderly members. When formed in 1884, the Presbyterian Home Society looked towards supporting aged women through the establishment of a home that was supported by outside donations and voluntary contributions by Presbyterian churches throughout Maryland. Lacking a stable source of financial income and support, the home relocated several times until it purchased a building on Carrollton Avenue, which it quickly outgrew. By 1924, the long waiting list made locating to a new facility a priority. The Presbyterian Home Society found that Towson and the former Bosley Mansion or Highlands was able to meet their needs perfectly. Almost immediately after taking ownership, additions were planned to provide proper facilities for their residents. And they hired architect William Gordon Beecher to design the $50,000 project, which would contain 30 private rooms, baths, and sun parlors. The first phase of expansion primarily involved the eastern elevation of the building, which was originally the primary facade when Bosley first constructed the house in 1869. Continuing a pattern of expansion, additions to the northern elevation were made in 1947, adding a recreation space. In 1955, Baltimore County reviewed plans for a proposed new wing to be added to the western elevation, along with other alterations to the previously existing additions on the northern elevation. The 1957 Sanborn Fire Insurance map illustrates the building expansion along with materials that were used for construction. In June of 1977, the Presbyterian Home initiated plans to expand again, this time with a new wing containing more rooms and an infirmary that would enlarge it by 1/3. This new addition added more space to the already altered eastern elevation. The Presbyterian Home expanded again in 1989, a new addition that was added onto the 1977 edition. Even with all the plans for expansion, the board of directors at the Presbyterian Home was considering a new course for expansion that would require relocation as early as the 1980s. While the Presbyterian Home was planning another expansion in 2004, the board also was looking at other possible locations on Maryland's Eastern Shore and Hartford County. And problems with the site led to the exploration of other space for relocation and expansion, which resulted in a formal move in 2016. Once the farm Highlands evolved into a gentleman's country estate until it became a centerpiece of a residential development conceived in the height of suburbanization in the 1920s and 30s. The Presbyterian Home of Maryland followed the flight from Baltimore City to the suburbs in conjunction with a pattern of expansion in order to find solid middle-class surroundings that would be comfortable and familiar to those who live there, providing stability and respectability to the aged population. The changes made to Highlands reflect those changes brought with suburbanization in Towson that occurred in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The creation of the 4.5-acre parcel, the reorientation of the building and site, as well as the 20th century portico on the main southern facade is significant for its association with the Southland Hills development and the Presbyterian Home of Maryland. The initial 1929 classical revival additions to the building reflect the stylings of many 20th century industrial buildings. Although the mansard roof and dormers have their root in the 19th century, the plan characteristic of this architectural style has been obscured by the 20th century additions made for its adaptive reuse as a home for the aged. Only one 19th century elevation is exposed on the southern facade, and it also reflects a 20th century classical revival appearance that likely coincides with the changes made to the property during the 1920s. The reconfiguration of the structure on the eastern elevation where the original primary facade was located also results in an architectural example associated with the Presbyterian home, which obscures its 19th century period. The small 19th century era accessory structure has also become part of the 20th century landscape, albeit a reminder of the 19th century Towson. Most buildings change over time, and those changes can gain significance on their own. When reviewing nominations for landmark designations and for the National Register, we look at a building as a whole, not just a smaller portion of the structure. The National Register Bulletin, titled How to Apply the National Register Criteria for Evaluation, states that parts of buildings such as interiors, facades, or wings are not eligible independent of the rest of the building. While the structure has a historic association with Dr. Grafton Bosley, of whom played a role in the growth and history of Towson, the house and estate no longer retains integrity of design, materials, workmanship, or setting to convey that association to Bosley, meaning the 19th century house and setting associated with Bosley have been substantially altered since he lived there and since he made his contributions to the development of Towson. Better, less altered examples of high-style houses dating from the mid to late 19th century can be found in the Towson vicinity, including Egbert Vale, Dumbarton House, and Villa Annesley. Egbert Vale is also an excellent, largely unaltered example of the Second Empire style. In addition, other examples of the Second Empire style exist outside of the Towson area. There's several are located in Lutherville County Historic District and in other areas of Baltimore County, like Catonsville, Parkton, and Arbutus. The historic setting associated with Dr. Grafton Bosley was altered with the development of the Southland Hills community and the Presbyterian Home of Maryland's long occupation. Any historic entrances or carriage roads have been absorbed or obscured through the changes made by the Southland Hills development and the evolution of the Presbyterian home. The present main entrance and orientation of the complex directly relates to the alterations made from subdividing the property for the Southland Hills development and alterations made by the Presbyterian home. The present structure and setting are more associated with the 90-plus-year occupancy of the Presbyterian home and its long-time relationship to the community of Southland Hills than to Dr. Grafton Bosley. The period of significance for the whole complex would be defined to include those elements that represent the first phase of improvements associated with the Southland Hills development and the Presbyterian Home of Maryland, which would be around 1922 to 1932. Again, just a reminder, a property to be eligible for county landmarks, it must demonstrate significance in terms of one or more of the 5 broad criteria as set in our county code. In addition, when we apply the criteria, we use the National Register Bulletin on how to apply the National Register criteria for evaluation, which is outlined in the Landmark Preservation Commission's Historic Guidelines and Regulations, the section on evaluating nominations. After additional research and review made by staff, again, here are the criteria that were submitted with the nomination. And then after additional research and review, staff has determined that the Bosley Mansion does not meet the criteria that was presented in the submitted nomination, and therefore is not eligible for listing as a Baltimore County landmark. And justification for criteria 1 as well. The structure has a historic association with Dr. Bosley, of whom played a role in the growth of the house, and the house and estate no longer retains integrity, design, materials, workmanship, or setting to convey that association, meaning that the 19th century house and setting associated with Bosley have been substantially altered since he lived there and made his contributions to developments of Towson. On criteria 2 for architecture, although the mansard roof and dormers have their root in the 19th century, the plan characteristic of this architectural style has been heavily altered and obscured by the 20th century additions made for its adaptive reuse as home for an age. And that is the end of my presentation, and we'll move on. Now we will hear from the property owner and their representatives. I will unmute Suchet, the Presbyterian home, and her representatives, Jennifer Lucy from Whiteford Taylor Preston, and Catherine Coranda of our Christopher Goodwin and Associates. Just give me a moment. There's a lot of names to scroll through. All right, you are unmuted.
I couldn't see any video either.
I'm not sure if that's just on your end.
Caitlin, she would need to be promoted to a panelist.
It's not crucial. At least what's important is I can see PowerPoint is up. I just didn't know if it would be share what will I speak to.
I am a panelist and I could see nothing.
Is that Wendy?
Yes, it is.
No, okay.
It's okay. Jen, we can at least see the presentation, but you are very hard to hear right now. Do you have a different mic that you can use?
What about this? Is this better?
No.
Maybe turn up the volume of your computer or the device you're using.
What about now?
A little better.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. I'll speak up and get a little close. And as long as you can't see how close I am, we're all good.
Oh, no.
It actually works in my favor that you can't see me now then. Yes, thank you, Caitlin. Jennifer Bussey, the firm Whiteford, Taylor, and Preston, here on behalf of the property owner. And first of all, thank you, obviously, Caitlin and Taylor, for your work. It's been a pleasure to work with you both. And thank you to each of the commission members for your time and your service. Again, I do have Miss Sue Shea, the CEO of the Presbyterian Home here, and Miss Catherine Miranda with our Goodwin and Associates. She has prepared a brief PowerPoint, which we thought we would go through, if that's okay next.
Sure.
Okay, great.
Just let me know when to change the next slide and I'll do that for you.
Okay, so with that, then I think I'll turn it over to Kate. And Kate, I'll let you go ahead and indicate when to turn a slide.
Terrific. Thank you. Good evening. For the record, my name is Kate Caranda, and I'm Senior Vice President with our Christopher Goodwin and Associates. Sam Young, who is the Assistant Project Manager on this project, is also in the meeting. Slide, please. Our firm was retained by the Presbyterian Home of Maryland, the current owners of the property, to complete an architectural and historical investigation of the Bosley Mansion and grounds, applying Baltimore County's historic guidelines and regulations. And all work was completed by architectural historians who exceed the professional qualifications established by the Secretary of Interior. Slide, please. Our findings were submitted in a letter report to the LPC and are consistent with the findings of staff that were presented in that excellent staff report. I'd like to commend them. I'd like to very briefly review the data that led us to our conclusions that neither the house nor the grounds retain the historical integrity necessary for inclusion in the preliminary landmarks list. Slide, please. The Bosley home mansion is encompassed in a sprawling institutional building that was developed between 1869 and 1989. The surviving original portion of the building is depicted in red, and you can see it's a small portion of what's there now. The mansion is now part of a much larger institutional building, and as noted by staff, Bulletin 15 directs that buildings must be considered holistically, and parts of buildings are not considered eligible for consideration as landmarks on their own. Next, please. Changes over time have severely compromised the historical integrity of the mansion. The house was embedded within the Presbyterian home between 1931 and 1989. The house was reoriented to the south in the 1920s, and the current landscape reflects the hardscape and landscape improvements from the 1931 to 2016 during its use as a nursing home. The visible building face was originally a side elevation. The monumental portico incorporates fiberglass columns, and the remaining building utilizes 20th century institutional materials and construction standards. Next slide, please. Only a small fraction of the mansion's exterior walls and historic finishes survive. The majority were substantially altered during the successive expansion of the larger building. The feeling of the building and the campus reflects its use as a nursing home. The property and its current configuration is associated with the development and operation of the nursing home between 1931 and 1989. While a few elements of the original house survive, the dwelling as a whole has been lost. Slide, please. Now, the mansion and grounds were nominated, as noted in the staff report, under Criterion 1 for its association with Dr. Bosley, and under Criterion 2 as an example of a distinctive architectural style or period. Next slide, please. Applying Bulletin 15, properties important for individuals must be associated with that individual during their period of importance. Next slide, please. The nomination cites several events to support Dr. Bosley's historical contributions. He donated land to the courthouse and jail in Towson in 1854. He was a member of the First Noble Grand Lodge at Towson in 1852. The Towson Grand Guards held a jousting tournament on Bosley land between 1878 and 1881, and he leased land to the Baltimore County Agricultural Society in 1879. However, between 1859 and 1869, Bosley resided at the Highlands House, a large stone dwelling that he inherited from his uncle, Dr. March, which was located at 509 West Joppa Road. This house unfortunately was lost approximately 1975. The Highlands was also the name of the parcel Bosley inherited from his uncle. So there's occasionally a little confusion between the house and the land. The Bosley Mansion was not constructed until 1869. Period newspaper coverage of the tournament and the Baltimore County Agricultural Society does not document Bosley's active involvement in either organization other than owning the land that was used for the events. Slide, please. Bosley Mansion and grounds do not survive. The mansion facade was reoriented. There have been 6 extensive additions to create the current institutional building. The existing mansion was embedded in a 20th century nursing home. Roughly 40% of the original exterior walls are now interior walls. The landscape subdivision and redesign in circa 1922 was regraded and reoriented to Georgia Court and further altered for elder care use during the 1931 to 2016 use as a nursing home. The small outbuilding rests now where larger agricultural support buildings originally were constructed during the Bosley residence, and the dwelling and landscape are associated with improvements made by the Presbyterian Home of Maryland rather than Dr. Bosley during its occupation between 1869 and circa 1890. Slide, please. It is our professional opinion that the Bosley Mansion and grounds do not retain sufficient historical integrity nor significance necessary for designation as a Baltimore County landmark. Slide, please. And we appreciate the opportunity to share our findings and are happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate, as well.
Thank you for all of the presentations from staff and from Kate. The next item on the agenda in this presentation is a presentation by Ann Griesen of Preservation Alliance of Baltimore County. Ann, are you there?
Yeah, no, I'm going to unmute her. Not necessarily a presentation, but she's going to address, and she's a nominator of the landmark nomination. All right, and you're unmuted.
Hi. Actually, Jeff Lees, who is one of our board members, is going to make the initial presentation. I'm just going to speak towards the end of the meeting, but Jeff Lees is actually on to speak on our behalf first.
Okay, let me
Thank you.
find him. All right, Jeff, you're unmuted.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Jeffrey Lees. I'm an architect in Baltimore County, licensed architect in Maryland since 1982, and I've had my own private architectural practice since 1984. I specialize in historic architecture consulting, and this evening I'm representing the Preservation Alliance of Baltimore County with my comments. I was initially contacted in 2016 by the Southland Hills Community Association to testify at that time when it was initially considered for nomination, but then went on hold basically. So I'm here again testifying, but on behalf of Preservation Alliance of Baltimore County. And I've been trying to discuss the why it is a acceptable example of criteria number 2, distinctive example of a particular architectural style or period. And really, it's only fair to talk about the main block of the house as being Second Empire. And I want to first mention that there's 2 thoughts here. One is the provenance of the house, which is documented by already. Caitlin has documented its provenance, and this article, which was already shown by Caitlin about the write-up in the paper, in the 1869 paper. So provenance is one of the things here that we have to recognize. The second thing is conformance with an ideal type. And again, that's the Second Empire style that we're really trying to consider. And I have a slide, an image that I'd like to show that is taken from the Field Guide to American Houses by Virginia Savage McAllister. It's not a very good slide. I apologize for my scanner wasn't that good, but basically it shows what are really the features here, what we call character defining features. And the original section of the Bosley Mansion shows or checks all the boxes, so to speak, with the steeply pitched mansard roof at the top. It has dormers similar to the one in the middle. In the example of dormers, it has the bracketed cornice below the roof line. The smaller type below is hard to see, but it says things like that there are the pattern slate that remains. There are paired windows. We've seen examples of that at the entry as well as on the visible sections of the south facade. We know, like I said, that there are brackets. There's the cupola. These are kind of the ideal features shown in Ms. McAllister's book. There was a page adjacent to this that I didn't copy, but basically it shows the distinctive dormer patterns within the mansard type steeply pitched roof. So if you can go to the next slide or images, there's a couple photographs of the existing building that I wanted to show. And of course, this is an example of the paired windows and paired doors that showed up on the McAllister description of a classic Second Empire style. Another image, please. And again, here we have these patterned dormers and patterned slate roof and then the paired windows again with the bracketed cornice below that. These are classic examples of the Second Empire here, as even shown in the McAllister book. So again, we have provenance and we have the character defining features that give conformance with the ideal of a Second Empire style building. Now, if you talk about integrity, well, we have not just this main block here, but we also have the additions, and the Park Service recognizes these additions as having historic significance in their own rights. So really, this building is a continuum, a representation of multiple years, owners, and different styles even of architecture. Although the main block is what we're primarily concerned about, the wings, added at least up until 1955, do have their own significance as historic structures, and the Park Service would recognize them as such. So really what we have is a classic example here of adaptive use where the original structure has been altered and extended for usage over time. And that, I think, is its primary significance that's not being discussed here. So I wanted to say that in light of, yes, every building has changes to it because there are multiple owners. There are very few pure buildings, architecturally speaking. Every owner adds a layer change or conforms with some features of a later time period, like the classic portico on the south facade that is kind of the colonial revival essence. So again, we need to look at this not just as only Second Empire, although that is its main distinguishing feature. We need to look at a continuum of structures that have been added and are sympathetic. If you look at the whole composition over time, the only wings perhaps that would not be considered were the later 1979 wings, I believe. But if you look at the 1929 wing, that fits in pretty well and it has historic significance in its own right. So again, you have to look at a bigger picture here. Again, I'm trying to show you some images of the display the character defining features, the dormer, this type in that patterned slate roof. You see the or hexagonal slates and the regular slate shingles. And then there's in the lower images, I guess what's referred to as the tool shed. But I would say that we still have integrity of the features that were, we have workmanship in the slate roof, the dormers, the cupola, certainly, the bracketed corners. Nobody's building houses like this anymore. So I say that this is clearly a good conformance with criteria number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Lees. All right, Ed, I'm going to turn it back to you so we can get to public testimony.
Before we do public testimony, I want to know if any of the commission members have any questions for the presenters that have presented to date.
Was Ann going to speak as well? From Preservation Alliance of Baltimore County?
She deferred to Jeffrey Lees, I believe.
But I thought she also said she was going to say something at the end.
Okay.
And did you want to say something at the end? Sorry.
I can do that now, or I can wait until others speak, whatever is your preference.
Why don't you go now?
You can do it now, so it's together with Preservation Alliance. So.
Right, and maybe I could speak a little bit more than to criteria 1. And I think part of what's so significant, which Caitlin did refer to about the property, is not just the history of the days when Dr. Bosley was there, but also what's so significant is really how his history has continued on in terms of institutional complexes. He is the one who gave the land for the Oddfellows building. And I just want to make sure that you all did have the letter of support from the current Oddfellows Hall. That was submitted, as well as I think a late letter of support today from our sister organization, or actually our brother organization in Baltimore City, from Baltimore Heritage, from their executive director, supporting the preservation of the full property, both the buildings as well, or the core building, I should state, as well as the grounds. But I think with criteria 1, what's important here is really that continuation of caring about institutions. And I think the Presbyterian home creation is most definitely a development of that. So the significance of the Presbyterian home is actually very important, I think, in the nomination, in that it really is the continuum of what Dr. Bosley's plans were for the goodwill of the county, for the support of the county. So I think we really can't discredit Southland Hills, and in terms of the neighborhood and it being an example that truly respects the history as well as the siting of the mansion, but also the Presbyterian home itself in terms of its philosophy of caring for the community is very much an extension and a continuation of the goals and ideals that Dr. Bosley did have at that time. So I think that really does add to the continuum of history. So it may have not been quite at that period, but again, it did continue on. And just really wanted to, again, thank all the community members who have been very supportive of the project. We've met with quite a few community members, and especially the ones who live along the perimeter of the property. The majority of them are supportive of keeping both the building as well as the grounds intact and part of their community. I know that there are a lot of people waiting to speak, so if I could have maybe a minute or two at the end if needed to just recap something, but otherwise that was my main statement. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's one thing we missed. Taylor was going to read the names of all the constituents who submitted written testimony. Taylor, do you want to do that now?
Yes, so if you're online and you submitted previous written testimony, we're going to read your name so it's entered into the record. The letters are not being read because we received so many of them, but they have been shared with the commission in full. Letters were received from the following, and I apologize in advance if I say your name wrong. Angela Marjak, Ann Sinobes, Bob and Kristen Ost, Bob Gaylor, Charles Alexander, Christy Vischer, Colin Drain, David Greenberg, Dawn Greenberg, Donna Eden, the Friends of Bosley Green Community Group, Gail Stenton, Jean Leisure, who is the Grand Master of the International Lodge, Georgia Chantalise Ruby, Hiram Woodward, Jamie Suzuki, Jason Rhines, Joanna Greenhood, Johns Hopkins, Catherine Denison, Lisa Custer, Louise and Donna Timberner Rhodes, Mary Gibson, Megan Knox, Melissa Kirby, Michael and Christine Hoffman, Michael Martin, Monet Chantels Ruby, Nicole Pope, Phil Custer, Robert and Melissa Jenkins, Ruth Mascari, Stephen Williams, Suzanne Fulkerson, O'Connor, Susan Stern, and Matt Kozak, Taryn Rhines, Theodore Tucker, and Amos, Thomas and Barbara Gaylor, Thomas Aversa Jr., Wendy Jacobs, and Charles Profit, Will Knox, and William Thompson. And those were all letters in support of the nomination. And then letters in opposition to the nomination were received from Angie Hoge, the Board of Southland Hills Improvement Association, Carol Allen, Jeremy and Ann Tallman, Jim and Deb Tomey, Joseph Fleury, Kate Knott, Mel Roche, Mary Alterman and Ed Rosenfeld, Peter Dischinger, Philip and Allie Perry, Rebecca McNarma, Stephen McNarma, Wendy Kreitz, and William D. Sherman.
Thank you, Taylor. The next item is I'd like for if the commission, any commissioners have any questions that they would like to address to the presenters, why don't we do that now before we have public comments?
And these should be questions just for clarification, understanding, no discussion. If any of you have questions pertaining to the presentation, but again, please try to stay brief so we can get moving on.
Yeah, this is not our, we will have a discussion following the public comments, but I wanted to at first just to see if you had any clarifications that need to be made.
So I have one clarification. This is Phoebe Evans-Latosha. Am I correct that Southland Hills is not, as a neighborhood, is not a historic district?
It is not.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, if you want to talk, Taylor, about how public comments will be handled.
I'll leave that to Caitlin.
Sure. So we would like, if anyone who has not previously either submitted a letter, previously, who is online and would like to speak, we would like to give those priority. And we would like to make sure that the testimony is limited to 2 minutes. Please either select the hand raise button to let us know, or you can send a chat to myself as the host to let me know. And so far we have, I have a Theodore Amos. Mr. Amos, I'm going to unmute you. All right, you're muted, and your 2 minutes is starting now.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Amos.
Good evening, members. Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. Good evening, members. My home is on Georgia Court, across from the property discussed, and I'm a native of Towson. I urge you to support landmarking the Towson Bosley Mansion building and setting. The cohesion of my neighborhood, which is historically significant to Baltimore County, is threatened. There have been overwhelming support for the preservation of this building for many years and over generations. In 2016, I joined 150 neighbors and community members who gathered in support of preserving Bosley Mansion. Much of that community support still exists and has increased. In truth, if you ask most people around my neighborhood about the Bosley Mansion, they will tell you they think it is already safe from demolition. They may say that they wonder why earlier development plans have not moved ahead. Didn't we all stand up for preservation? Didn't the 3 leaders of our neighborhood already receive county commendations for preserving this property? Didn't we hire a photographer to document our efforts, print t-shirts and yard signs? Didn't we ask our aging parents and children to lend their passion and creativity to our hopes? Wasn't it all captured on video and in the newspaper? Some of my fellow neighbors polled residents last year. In truth, most neighborhood residents recognize the property's beauty and essential value and have signed a petition that your membership received. I studied architecture, planning, and historical construction and preservation. I've been a licensed architect for 21 years and have been in the design industry for 37. My practice includes planning, adaptive reuse, sensitive alterations involving historic buildings and sites, Baltimore County, Maryland. As a design contractor to the federal government, my work has included landmark buildings all over the
15 seconds
Northeast
left.
region. Oh, okay. Well, the main thing I'd like to say is, from what I observe about the current site plans and historical plats, the perimeter of the historic stone wall and settings lies on top of the parcel's property lines in common with the county roads along Georgia Court, Dixie Drive, and Florida Road. These stone walls are protected public structures and should be preserved as necessary and beautiful neighborhood infrastructure of Southland Hills. In the United States, property rights have never been unlimited. However, most citizens want to live in a society that respects our community heritage and built environments. The Commission must uphold reasonable demolition restrictions of this historic property because Landmark Commission stewardship of Maryland cultural and historic resources demand as much. I have some other things to say.
Yeah, just wrap it up really quickly.
That's all I can say. I mean, I would have more than I thought I could have a little bit more time, but I can forward the rest of the remarks in the chat if you'd like. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next. Caitlin, do we have more?
Actually, we do not. I don't see anything in the chat, or I don't see any more hand raises. So.
Okay. Well, next, let's open it up to.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. Someone just hit their hand raise. Hold on. Where did it go? Oh no, they just undid it. Sorry.
Well, let's.
Oh wait, no, and then it came back. Okay. All right. So Mr. Joe Slovic, I'm gonna unmute you. And give you your 2 minutes. Sorry, you're muted.
Yeah, I wanted to follow on last commenter that, you know, it is private property. It has been sitting at the center of Southland Hills now since the 1920s. Obviously, earlier in its much more likely been viewed as a structure. The nominated property was simply done to prevent any development on the site. It's pretty clear from the record, submitting it and resubmitting it. You know, the nominated property was because of its association with Grafton Bosley, lived at the property during any of his time, and because of its empire style, that its original form, the idea of extend the nomination later eras of the property, what it was nominated for, and the vast majority now supports redevelopment. Speaker's point, there were people early on and held up signs. That the South Improvement Association board and membership and gone against says that there's a lot more support for redevelopment of this property, of nomination of the property.
All right, is that it? I mean, okay. Mr. Slovak?
That's all.
All right, thank you very much. We have a few others that sent me a chapter in that. I am going to say your name and then unmute you in the order that you sent me a chat. So give me 1 second. All right, so first we have Mr. Robert Burke. And just a reminder, if you can just say your name and if you're with an organization or your address if you live in the neighborhood, just so we can have that. All right. All right, Mr. Burke, you're unmuted.
Okay, my name is Rob Burke. I live at 17 Florida Road. I look out directly across to the Bosley Mansion. Not really widely known as the Bosley Mansion, really widely known as the Presbyterian home. I take issue with the first speaker's comments about how there's overwhelming support for the historic preservation of that property. My experience with the neighborhood is we are divided, but I think the overwhelming majority of folks would prefer to have it with a reputable developer who has been trying for years to make something out of this property. Right now, it's an overgrown dump. I don't know who's stealing the stones to that precious stone wall, but the wall is eroding. Weeds that started out as weeds are now trees. There are homeless folks and other people wandering through there. Who knows what's going on inside the dilapidated structure. There is no money to maintain that property, and it is a significant eyesore, and it's a problem for this neighborhood. And there is very little. You have to jump through hoops to connect any historical significance to someone named Bosley, and you have to look up in history books to know who the guy is. I understand historical preservation, but there is almost no association with this community. That structure has been changed dozens of times. The original historical connected property is a tiny fraction of that sprawling, dilapidated dump, and it needs to not be preserved historically. A reputable developer needs to do something good with that property for this community and for the
15 seconds left.
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, next we have a comment from Michael Martin. Mr. Martin, I'm going to unmute you here in a moment. All right, Mr. Martin, you're unmuted. Hello, Mr. Martin. All right. Mr. Martin, you're unmuted. If I don't hear anything, I'm going to move on. All right. I'm going to move on to the next person who I have. I have David Edwards. Give me one moment, Mr. Edwards, and I'll unmute you. All right, Mr. Edwards, you're unmuted.
Good evening, and thank you all for your time. And I really appreciate all the hard work that went into the research and the findings. And we all have a great respect for the history of our county and all of the wonderful structures around the county that contribute to our heritage. With respect to the neighborhood association, would simply, as the president of the neighborhood association, like to reiterate that we are not aware of any proposal, funding, organization, or in any way an active effort to financially preserve this property. We have been privy to many proposals, some of which were inclusive or attempts, and a lot of dollars were spent in trying to find a solution to preserve the structures, but none of those proved to be financially viable. Certainly, in a perfect world, it would be nice to preserve this, but the property simply doesn't have options, and it is plagued by problematic location and also many of our neighbors are subject to the stormwater deficits that this property creates. So anyone who takes over this property is going to inherit also that issue, which complicates the development and a potential preservation. I'd also like to just address
Yes, 15 seconds left.
Okay, thank you. I think it's worthy of note that the nominator from Preservation Alliance alluded to engaging members of the community, but for the record, they did not engage the neighborhood association. And when asked to take questions directly from our board and leadership, we're not willing to do so. We found that confusing and certainly disrespectful to the neighborhood.
All right, time's up. Thank you very much, Mr. Edwards. Moving on, we have an Ann Snowium Boss. I'm sorry if I butchered your last name, but I'll unmute you in a moment. Just find your name. All right, Ann, you're unmuted.
My name is Ann Snowenboss. I live at 5 Florida Road, which is on the east side of the mansion property. I bought my house 5 years ago because it faces the side of the mansion and I have a view of the grounds and trees that are over 100 years old on that property. The entire neighborhood of Southland Hills was laid out around the mansion property. The curving roads of Southland Hills don't make any sense without that property as the focal point. As Caitlin Merritt said, I support landmarking the mansion and its green space. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I do not have any others. Oh wait, just kidding. One just popped up. Hold on. Miss Adatsi Briegel, just give me one moment and I will unmute you. And again, if you had already submitted a letter of support, the commission has received it. So again, if we want to reserve these comments for people who did not submit prior testimony. All right, Datsi Briegel, you're unmuted.
Hi, thank you. I live at the corner of Chesapeake and Florida, and the back of our home abuts what will be, well, abuts the Presbyterian home. I'm speaking against this because I've been listening this evening, and I feel like it's a misrepresentation of what the neighbors that I've been talking with and what the board has been saying. We are not, I mean, while we wanted the mansion preserved in the beginning, things have changed. We've seen how it's deteriorating, and it's the Presbyterian home has said they're going to put a fence around it, a wire fence. We surely don't want that to happen. My concern is what will happen if this goes through. How many more years will it be? So it's very upsetting to me, and I just want to have a voice, I think, for more people than have had an opportunity to speak tonight against it. We're in favor, we're not in favor of it. We're in favor of something else taking place, because the concern is there is no funding should this go through to make, you know, what the people that are in favor of it want to happen. And the concern is that it will just sit. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, we have another one, Jeanette LeBlanc. Just give me 1 second and find your name and I'll unmute you.
Several people that have spoken have written letters. So if you've written a letter, we've got a lot to do tonight. This is one of 15 items on the agenda. So I would appreciate if you could, if it's important to speak, speak. But otherwise, let us get on. And I think we're starting to hear some repetition of those that are for and those that are against. I think we've heard it, but if you need to speak, speak. But let's try to wrap this up.
All right. Ms. LeBlanc, you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Dotsie just said and also what Dave said. I live on Georgia Court. I'm also on the Southland Hills Board, and any comments that the neighborhood is all together and one mind, that definitely misrepresents what's happening. As Dotsie said, you know, things have definitely changed in these past years, and I am absolutely in favor of moving on, and I'm not in favor of having this landmarked. So I do not want to have a Perry Hall mansion property in front of our house either. So that's it. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. All right. That appears to be it.
Well, let's
so
now
going to move on.
Let's move on and have discussion with the commission. Caitlin, one thing that you mentioned earlier before the meeting started to me was that there was an issue with getting state and federal tax credits based on the state of the mansion itself. Could you just elaborate on that and explain that just briefly for the
Sure. So for a county landmark to be eligible for state or federal tax credits, it also needs to be eligible for the National Register. And the way the landmark nomination was submitted to us was only for the Bosley Mansion. It was not for the entire structure of the Presbyterian home. And from our National Register bulletin, that parts of structures are not eligible for the National Register because you have to consider the entire structure. With that regard, if it's landmarked as the Bosley Mansion, it would most likely not be eligible for the National Register, and then it would not qualify for state or federal tax credits for historic preservation, which are big incentives for developers to preserve and adaptively reuse structures.
Thank you. I'll open it up for discussion with the commissioners. If your commissioner wants to speak, please raise your hand.
Or they can just unmute themselves. They don't have that raise a hand option.
Okay. Well, unmute yourself and speak. Charles?
I have a question. In situations like this, are we expected to take into account any financial implications? I mean, it sounds like one of the issues is that designating this as an historic landmark will make this a more expensive project to renovate and may make it more difficult for any future owner to do anything with the building. Are we allowed to, is that one of the criteria that we're allowed to consider?
No, it's not. We're only allowed to evaluate on one of the 5 criteria that is in our code, which is association with an event, a person, for architecture, or for archaeology.
So it's legitimate for, I mean, because outside people can propose something they don't own be made historic, they can do it even if there's no consideration of the financial obligations involved.
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
So this is Rob Brennan. I'll get to it. I agree with staff's findings, staff's recommendation on the Bosley Mansion and grounds. And supported by Christopher Goodwin's associates analysis and presentation. I think it was very thorough.
As this falls in my district and my backyard, I do want to commend both the people who have been for it and both the people who have against it for a vigorous community debate, which is sometimes can be fracturing in a community. It's a very difficult thing when these kind of touchstone issues come up within a community. And I've been grateful that the comments and conversations I've had with community members on both sides of it have been civil and kind of just the facts, ma'am. So I appreciate that.
I think it's a beautiful building, but I have to agree with Rob's motion and the staff recommendation that it does not meet the criteria. Caitlin and Taylor, does someone need to read the recommendation?
Once the commission is ready for a motion, yes, you will have to have a formal motion. If you choose to side with staff or agree with staff, you can read the staff recommendation that is on the screen, but someone will have to.
Rob made the motion, right?
Actually, it was not a formal motion. Was
sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
We don't have a motion yet, but I think it's time for a motion.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing before we make the motion. I also agree with staff recommendations that this would, should not qualify as landmark status. It does seem to me that it's, just too much has been done to the building, that it has lost its integrity of its association with Mr. Bosley. I'm also, not convinced that Mr. Bosley was actually that important. And it seems that reading through all of the, the letters of support for this, it seemed that the primary interest and concern was with the grounds and the setting, more so than the building itself. And I think there may be, other avenues for the community to pursue for that. So, unfortunately, the Landmarks Preservation Commission can really only look at this as a landmark. We are not a land preservation commission. We are a landmarks preservation commission, and do have to follow the criteria of that. This building has been changed so much. It's unfortunate for the neighborhood that it was marketed as a, Southland Hills, one of these, 1920s restrictive covenant, streetcar suburbs, as having this colonial mansion in the center of it, a mansion on the hill, which was in fact, not a colonial mansion. It's been altered too much, so that I kind of feel like Southland Hills as a community has been kind of sold this false idea. And that is unfortunate. It is a lovely, parkland setting in the middle of the neighborhood, or at one point was, when it wasn't overgrown. But I would encourage those who are interested in, the land preservation aspects to pursue other avenues for that. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Phoebe. Those are very much in tune with what I've heard as well, that the community may be well served to have some conversation with Rec and Parks or other land preservation possibilities. But hearing that we need an actual motion, I'm happy to make that motion.
Could I ask one question? In all the discussion and everything, does Presbyterian Home still own it?
Yes.
Okay, so they are trying to not have it landmarked so they can sell it, market it to somebody. And the grounds as well, the park-like setting and all that.
Correct. Yeah, the entire parcel is under their ownership.
Okay, and they're trying to sell it as one parcel. I mean, they're not separating the building from the land or anything.
No, yeah, it's all together is my understanding.
And do you know what the zoning is for that?
That's outside our,
Yeah.
I think that's outside our.
It's outside our purview, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
I think we're here to look at, is this eligible to be a landmark in Baltimore County? That's our charge.
Okay. Just curious.
John, do you want to make a motion?
So
We
my
can
motion-
continue discussion after that.
Yes, my motion is to accept the staff recommendation to deny preservation status.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any more discussion? Hearing none, do we want to, Taylor, could we do a roll call vote?
Yes, thank you. Scott,
Yes.
Chris,
I want to confirm to agree with the staff recommendation is a yes vote.
correct. Yep. So
Yeah,
you are voting.
yes, I agree with the staff recommendation.
Yes, if you are voting yes right now, you are voting not to place the structure on the preliminary landmarks list. Okay. John,
Yes.
Phoebe,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Vince,
Yes.
Wendy,
No.
and Ed.
Yes.
And with 9 yeses, that motion carries. The structure is not added to the preliminary landmarks list.
Thank you all. All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda. Taylor, do you want to discuss it? Or
Yes, thank you.
describe it?
Yes, agenda item number 6. This is the Brocado property at 210 Morris Avenue in Lutherville. It's a non-contributing structure in the Lutherville County Historic District. And the proposal is the construction of a 10-foot round irregular bluestone patio with a 2-foot tall retaining wall on the right side of the driveway. The homeowners are proposing to construct this patio in the front yard of their property in Lutherville. The lot at 210 Morris Avenue is approximately 230 feet deep, and the front facade sits approximately 155 feet back. Due to this, the homeowners do not have a large backyard or space to place the patio behind the home. While the commission does not have purview over landscaping, the patio will be screened from Morris Avenue by existing trees and landscaping that are remaining in place. The commission has approved other patios and hardscaping in front yards of homes in Lutherville in the past, including a 250 square foot flagstone patio in the front yard of 218 West Seminary Avenue about 2 years ago. Staff is accepting of the patio design, but encourages the commission to discuss if an alternative location in the front yard may be more appropriate. Staff's recommendation, though, is to vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness, citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, Fences and Landscape, page 4, and County Code section 327403. And I do have some written testimony from the property owner, so I'm just going to read that really quickly. Holly Brocado, the property owner, said, "Thank you for the opportunity to testify. The historical integrity of our neighborhood is important to my husband, Russell, and I, and we are committed to upholding the committee's standards with our proposed patio project. Our home, 210 Morris Avenue, is situated at the very back end of our property line, leaving little to no room for a patio in the back. We intend to build a round 10-foot patio and retaining wall using irregular flagstone to match our home's existing masonry work. The patio will essentially be hidden by any existing landscaping. We take pride in our home and neighborhood and can assure you that this small project will not affect the historical integrity of either. Thank you for your time, Holly Brocado."
All right, any discussion?
Bob, I'll jump in. This is Rob. But while I want to confirm there's no pool involved in this proposal, right?
No pool. It's just an example of the retaining wall.
Yes. And no fire pit.
No fire pit, okay. I would think they would not use this much because it's so far from the house. In addition to it being in the front yard near the street. So I would agree with staff, advocate to move it closer to the house and perhaps in a secondary location.
Do you have any issue with, from a historic perspective, of putting it there if that's where they want it? I don't disagree with you, is my first thought as well, but people sometimes want things that are further from their house.
Well, historically, no. I think there's stone gate posts and stone walls and that sort of thing, you know, at the driveway entrance. So no problem there.
Any other comments on it? Any other issues with how it's laid, where it is, or how it's laid out? There may be issues in our minds with it being far away, but others may find that it works better for them for some reason. There are a fair number of trees in that area and some protection. But I can't address that. Any other comments? We have a motion.
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Sorry, who was our second from? Was that Steve?
Steve.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Hearing no discussion. Taylor, would you like to do a roll call?
Yes, please. Scott?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Phoebe?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Rob?
I'll say no.
Steve?
Yes.
Vince?
I'm gonna say yes, but I wanted to have a question after the vote.
Wendy?
Yes.
And Ed?
Yes.
And with 9 yeses, that does pass. Vince, you said you had a question?
Yeah, I was looking at I was going back and forth in the photos, and I was looking, and I was trying to establish where it is from the road, and I see it looks like, if I'm looking at this right, the one photo looks like if you're coming down the road, I assume there's a road coming right where their driveway is. You might see it at one point, but then at some point the trees might obscure it a little bit. I don't know. I can't tell.
Correct. Caitlin, can you go back to the photos? So the photo on the bottom row, the second one over, the yellow X shows the proposed location.
Driveway facing 210 and proposed patio area. Is that it?
Yes. So it's possible that if you were coming down Morris, that you would not see it, but that if you were coming up it, you possibly could.
Okay.
But they do have screening, as you can see in the other photos.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And with that, if there's no further discussion, that motion does pass. So we will continue right along because we do still have a lot to get through.
Okay.
Agenda item number 8. This is the Bub Nash property at 14 Chatsworth Avenue in Glendon. This is a contributing structure in the Glendon County Historic District. MIP number BA737. The proposal is the replacement of 3 entry doors and the replacement of 5 windows on the rear addition. The homeowners are seeking approval for the replacement of the front, side, and rear entry doors and 5 windows. The existing front door is a painted steel panel door with side lights on either side. The homeowners are proposing to replace the door with a fiberglass door with a half moonlight at the top and side lights on either side. Staff recommends the half moonlight at the top of the door be omitted so the new door matches the existing door in design. The side and rear doors are both painted wood and located on a 1970s non-historic addition. They are both partially glazed with four lights at the top and are a panel style on the bottom. The homeowners are proposing to replace both doors with fiberglass half glazed with an internal 9-light grid pattern. Because the proposed doors will not be highly visible from the public right-of-way and are on a non-historic addition, staff recommends approval as proposed. The second proposal is the replacement of 5 windows on the 1970s non-historic rear addition. 4 of the existing windows are in a continuous grouping or ribbon. The 5th is a laundry room window. All of the windows are wood 1/1 sashes with removable storms. All proposed replacements will be Pella wood clad windows. The ribbon of 4 will be casement windows, and the single laundry room window will be a double hung window. While staff typically warns against the replacement of wood windows with wood clad replacements, these windows are not historic or original and will not be visible from the public right of way, so staff is accepting of the proposal. Staff recommends voting to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the replacement of the front entry door with the condition the half moonlight be omitted so the replacement door matches the existing in design. Vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the replacement of the side and rear entry doors as proposed, And vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the replacement of the 5 windows as proposed, citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, Windows and Doors, pages 2, 4, 7, and 8, and County Code Section 327403.
Are there any, is anyone here to speak for the owner?
The property owner is here. If you have anything else to add, I'm gonna mute you right now.
No further comment. It sounds like you guys have a long agenda.
All right, thank you.
Any discussion of the commissioners? Do we have a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion. This is Rob. I would motion that we vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the replacement of the front entry door with the condition the half moon light be omitted. So the replacement door match the existing in design. Issue a certificate of appropriateness for the replacement of the side and rear entry doors as proposed, and issue a certificate of appropriateness for the 5 window replacements as proposed.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Who did the second?
Wendy did one.
It seemed like everyone wanted to accept it. We'll take Wendy's, just because I heard her a little louder than you, Steve. She beat Jen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any discussion?
I have a quick question. Am I reading it right that the existing front door is not original?
It's not original, correct.
So why the emphasis on making the new one look like the old one if the old one's not original?
The panel door is more appropriate to the neighborhood than that fan light on that other the proposed replacement. So that was the reason why to keep it the same as what's existing.
Shall we do a roll call vote?
Yes. Scott?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Phoebe?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Who's next? Steve?
Yes.
Vince?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
And Ed? Perfect. I'm sorry, I always write down everyone's initials to call the roll, and I wrote Steve's initials down as SW, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, who is SW? That was
that. Yeah.
It's Steve.
My cousin.
Alrighty, continuing right along, we have agenda item number 9. This is the Brooks property at 3609 Blackstone Road in Fieldstone. It's an infill construction in the Fieldstone County Historic District, and the proposal is the ex post facto approval of amended elevation drawings due to field modifications, the installation of an 8-foot tall privacy screen along the rear property line, and the construction of an 18 by 12 wooden deck. This is an infill construction that was originally approved by the Commission in February of 2020 with an amendment approved in June of 2020. The current home does not match the approved plans, and the homeowner cited difficulty getting supplies over the COVID-19 pandemic as to why. The homeowner also noted that he was not aware of the changes needing LPC review, as the materials used were in keeping with what was originally approved. Field modifications include changes in the windows from an approved 6/6 to an installed 2/2, omission of gable vents, changes in the siding, replacement of windows on the rear addition with sliding glass doors. I'm sorry, rear facade, not addition, and additional lighting on the rear facade. Staff has no issues with the changes in the shingle style on the left and right side gable ends, the omission of the gable vents, and or the addition of the 2 extra sliding glass doors on the rear and associated light fixtures, and recommends approval for these changes as completed. Regarding the siding changes, the front facade has 3 different styles of siding, which looks very out of place and like an error, and the change in the gable details from shingles to the half timbering is not appropriate for the home and the character of Fieldstone, which is composed of early 20th colonial revival cottages and cottage styles, not late 19th century Victorian houses. Staff would like to see the half timbering gable detail removed and shingles installed. To keep the design consistent with keeping the shingles as a gable detail, staff recommends the removal of the shingles installed on the second floor of the front and installing a lapped hardy plank as was originally proposed there. Regarding the window changes, the 2/2 windows are not appropriate or consistent with the overall historic district. Staff recommends they be removed and the original 6/6 windows be installed. Should the existing grids be snap-in, staff is accepting of only the grids being replaced. The second work item is the installation of an 8-foot wooden fence at the rear property line to serve as a privacy screening between 3609 Blackstone Road and the rear neighbors at 3606 Joni Brook Road. Baltimore County zoning regulations state that no residential fence may exceed 6 feet in the side and rear yards of the property, and if there is a setback of 2 feet for every vertical foot over 6 feet, the maximum height may not exceed 10 feet in the side and rear yards. The homeowner understands that should the commission support the request for an 8-foot privacy screen, it will need to be set back at least 4 feet from the rear property line. Although staff could not find past examples of an 8-foot tall privacy screening being approved in any county historic district, we are accepting of the proposal for the following reasons. 1, it's proposed to be on the rear property line, not enclosing the entire yard. 2, it's in a rear location, not highly visible from the public right-of-way. And 3, fences are semi-permanent features that can be removed in the future. This is with the note that should the homeowner wish to enclose the remaining portion of the backyard in the future, staff would expect the proposal to meet our historic design guidelines, and an 8-foot fence would not be appropriate to enclose the entire backyard. The final work item involves the construction of an 18 by 10 deck off the rear of the home. The deck will be all wood with wooden handrails and a wooden top rail. Staff recommends approval as proposed, as the deck is all wood and will not be visible from the public right-of-way. Staff's recommendations are to vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the left, right, and rear elevations as completed, with the exception of the windows. Vote to not issue a certificate of appropriateness or a notice to proceed for the siding alterations on the front elevation. Vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the removal of the front gable half timbering and installation of hardy shingle staggered edge panel siding to match the home. Issue a certificate of appropriateness for the removal of the hardy shingle staggered edge panel siding on the second floor of the front elevation and the installation of hardy lap siding as originally proposed. Vote to not issue a certificate of appropriateness or notice to proceed for the window alterations. Vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the 2/2 windows to be replaced with 6/6 double hung wooden windows with grills between the glass as originally approved. Vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the privacy screening along the or following the rear property line, with the understanding that zoning requirements may determine the final placement, and vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the deck as proposed. All of this is citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, additions and infill pages 4 to 7, fences and landscape pages 1 and 3, and County Code section 327403.
Hey, any discussion?
The property owner is online, so I'm gonna mute him to see if he has any thing to add, and if the commissioners have any questions. Mr. Brooks, you're unmuted.
Hello, good afternoon or good evening. Yeah, this is a difficult time for me. My family and I have been building this house for over a year now, and COVID smacked us, which has thrown us into a major financial dilemma, as you can imagine. Everything that we've done to this property has been to try to appeal to the historic community, our neighbors, everybody who comes by. They love it. We love it. It's been hell trying to get materials when it came to doing the siding, as well as the windows as well. Everything was bought out by big builders who, I guess, seen everything coming, and they just had the finances to house stuff. When it came to doing the shaker style, we literally could not get enough material to do the horizontal hardy. So what we had to do was take the shaker, which was going to go to the gable, and make that work so that we would have enough to get the house complete, so we didn't have any further damage with the elements. There's nothing that I don't have any more resources these with the windows. I mean, these windows cost me over $20,000. I don't know what to do. You know, I've spoken, you know, with Miss Bensley regarding the limiter, and a lot of the things had to been made on field. Nothing has been done maliciously. We just I want to get my family in this home. And again, like we love it. We think it fits very well. All of our neighbors, you know, absolutely love the home, and they constantly stop by. I mean, I think it's a really, really good fit, and I've done the best I can, and I've completely tapped out of all resources on this project. So, I mean, I'm kind of at wit's end with here, and I hope that you guys can, you know, see the effort that, you know, I've made here, and I'm really just trying to add value to the neighborhood and still try to fit in. And I think that all the materials we use, you know, do that.
Thank you. Any discussion from the commissioners?
I'd like to talk about the windows. Can I confirm that you said they were snap-in grills?
No, they're not snap-in grills.
Not snap-in. Okay. Does that correspond, Caitlin, to what you thought they were?
We didn't know if they were snap-in or if they were individually divided lights. That's why we made both those suggestions.
I will make a comment that I think the actual house looks a lot better than the drawings. Usually it looks like the drawings, so you've accomplished something there, I think.
Thank you, sir.
I tend to not have much sympathy when plans are submitted and then people change them without contacting us, when they, assuming because they submitted plans in the first place, are very clear on what's required of them. So that's always a disappointment to me when somebody just arbitrarily changes and goes about their own way, making decisions when they have this wonderful resource in our staff to help guide them to what's appropriate.
I have a similar feeling.
Can I address that?
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So this is a first for me. I never even knew anything about this historic, you know, preservation. So like I'm literally, Ms. Brinsley holds my hand through this whole process. You know, I did not know that it was going to be this issue. You know, if I did, I definitely would have said something. You know, I thought it was the material, and I made sure that the material was still fine, that we utilized. And so when she brought it to my attention, you know, I was very, you know, apologetic. I did not, you know, like I said, this wasn't a malicious thing that I intended to do. And I was quickly, you know, hopped on board to get everything over to you guys. You know, we were really stuck in a hard place. You know, every time we called every vendor to get this, we don't have it. We don't know when we're going to have it. This is all we have.
I think we've heard this. We've really got a long agenda that we're still going on.
Understand.
We've heard this before, so I understand, I sympathize, but I also we have some responsibilities as a commission.
Understood.
Any other comments from commissioners?
Because the windows are so dark, I'm not really sure that a change in the muntin pattern is going to be noticeable.
Unless the muttons were white. I guess the windows themselves are black.
Yeah, I don't know that that's the right move to have white muntins with
Yeah,
that
kind of
dark
like
glass. Yeah.
I think you're right. But I think it looks, when I look at this, it looks to me like they're just, big things of glass. I can't even see a mullion in it. I don't see a horizontal style. I don't.
Agreed. I think that this is very trendy to have these all black windows. But yeah, I don't know that modifying these existing windows is going to be an appreciable change.
But I think, what we have, I don't believe works from the historic perspective. I think the siding changes need to be made, and I think the window change need to be changed.
And could I ask a question of the owner?
Sure.
Yes.
Mr. Brooks, why did you not know that this was in a historic district?
No, I knew it was in a historic district. I wasn't familiar with the infield process. So when it came to the windows, we couldn't get the windows that were on the plan. They told me this is what they had, and I said, "Is the material the correct material?" He said, "Yes, it is." They've done this with historic communities, all the time, and it should have no issues working. So this is what we got. Our neighbor across the street has, the black windows as well, and so it fits. So I didn't think that was an issue. I mean, this is the first time you're building, a house, so it's and have it in this infill process. It's just there's a lot of it's new. It's just new,
Well,
and I'm
I know, but when you bought the land, weren't you told where it was? I mean, in the rules?
Well, he knew it was a historic building, a historic neighborhood, because he came and presented drawings to us.
Right, that's what I
yes,
thought.
He knows that he.
that's what I'm saying. I know it is. I know
If
it's
I could
historic.
interject real quick, I think the miscommunication was that Mr. Brooks was under the impression that because the windows were the same material, he was using the same material, it was just a different design. He was under the impression that was why it was okay. There was just a change in the design of the windows, that they were going from the 2/2 to this, or the 6/6 to the 2/2. So he didn't think that it would matter. It wasn't that he didn't know, it was that there was a miscommunication on what needs to come in for review and what doesn't. I think that's kind of more of what it was
Yes.
than the fact that he didn't know it was in a historic district. Because
Yes.
as Ed said, he has been before us twice. Not saying that either way or the other, just putting that out there so that everyone's on the same page.
Well, he has been twice. He came back for an amendment. You would think that if he had another amendment that he needed to do, he would come back again.
No, the amendments that were made were just the first time we were there. You guys approved it with conditions of, I guess, with conditions. So I did exactly what you guys told me to do.
Okay, well, let's continue on. Are there any other comments or questions? Do we have a motion? Can we have a motion, please?
I'll move to accept staff recommendations.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Taylor, would you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Scott?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Phoebe?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Rob?
No.
Steve?
Yes.
Vince?
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
and Ed.
Yes.
Okay. So that motion does carry. Gary, I'll be in touch via email tomorrow, and we can chat over what all of this means and where we go from here.
Okay.
Sounds great.
All
Moving right along.
Item number 11.
Yes, agenda item number 11. This is the DeLuca property at 212 West Seminary Avenue in Lutherville. It's a contributing structure in the Lutherville County Historic District, MIP number BA323. And the proposal is the construction of a one-story addition off the rear of the home. The homeowners are seeking approval for the construction of a one-story addition. The existing home is 2 stories with wood shingle siding. The addition is proposed to be 1 story and approximately 20 feet long, with wood cedar shake siding, a standing seam metal roof with metal gutters, wood 2/2 windows, and a full glass patio door. The patio door will lead to a small wooden landing with steps leading down to an existing patio. The size, massing, and scale and location of the addition are all appropriate. However, the proposed window style and cladding is not distinguishable from the main house. While staff appreciates the homeowner's intention on making the addition cohesive with the existing dwelling, the addition should not imitate the historic home. To differentiate, staff recommends using 1/1 wood windows and the use of a different style of cladding, such as either A, horizontal siding using a hardy plank or similar material with a vertical trim/transitional piece where the addition meets the main house as a way to separate and differentiate, or B, synthetic shingles like a hardy material with a vertical trim transitional piece where the addition meets the main house as a way to separate and differentiate. Staff encourages the commission to discuss both options as well as the proposal as is. As a note, on September 8th, the Lutherville Advisory Committee submitted a letter in opposition to the proposal, and it is included in the meeting materials. Staff's recommendation is to vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness with the condition the addition have 1/1 wood windows and the siding be wood or hardy plank horizontal siding, citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, additions and infill pages 2 through 4, and County Code Section 327403.
Thank you. Is anyone here from the owner?
Yes, I am.
Do you have any comments or?
No, that I'm actually fine with those recommendations and changes for the 1/1. I was when we did the architectural details, we just tried to, imitate what was existing to the house. If they think that, or you all think that 1/1 windows are more appropriate, that's fine, as well as a different siding material, vertical siding material, that would be fine with us as well.
I have one other suggestion, and that's maybe instead of changing materials, is to move the wall of the building back so it doesn't align with the wall of the house. So if it were 4 inches back, there would be a little bit of a break between the two materials.
That's fine as well.
Any other? Let's open it up for comments and questions from the commissioners.
Sir, homeowner, is this the work of an architect, or I'm noticing that your roof side elevation and or I guess rear elevation, the geometries don't really work. And you've also shown shingles down to grade, which would be in violation of building code. You have to have separation between wood structure and earth. So I just, if
correct, yeah,
some architect needs to work on this a little bit.
Yeah, the existing porches that are on the house, the front porch and the side screen porch, they actually have a wood lattice at the bottom of both of those porches in different heights, and that's how this would be finished as well.
I think maybe we ought to see how that's going to look. I mean, is that going to come up a fair amount and have it's hard to know where the floor line, oh, there's the floor line. Okay, so everything below the structure for the floor would be lattice, you're saying?
Correct.
Yeah, I would, this is Rob. I would suggest you may want to do a crawl space. It'll be a tough room to condition over the seasons. I think there's something going on with the scale here. It almost looks like you have to duck to go into the addition. It seems a little small, like a quarter smaller than it should be.
Okay.
And then, you know, you want to align the floor, and I think you want to align the ceiling. And then the roof comment was a good one, because if you slope it back as shown, it would go further, the ridge would be further back, and then you may want to raise it a bit. So it looks like it could use a little bit of adjustment
Okay.
on the design side.
I'll discuss that with them. Thank you.
Your geometries are not working for the roof.
Okay.
Someone needs to look at that in 3 dimensions and work it out, because it's what they built, drawn cannot be built or won't be built like that.
Right.
Does someone want to make a motion?
So if the drawings, you know, if what's going to be built isn't going to match these drawings, are we even able to issue a certificate of appropriateness, or issue, you know, to proceed, or do we need to have this come back with the, you know, drawings of what's actually going to be built? I mean, I know there've been other cases in the past where something's come before us because it didn't match the what was built, what the drawings were submitted.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to that. I mean, it sounds like you all want some modifications to the drawings themselves, which I can turn around for the next meeting and address those areas.
Yeah, I think we could have staff look at it, and if staff doesn't feel comfortable with what's being shown, I think we could, you know, we could bring it back, but otherwise maybe staff could review it so you don't have to come back again.
I will note that the Lutherville Commission did not approve this as submitted. And their consultant, architect Jeffrey Lees, had a list of recommendations, all of which I think were good ones.
Mm-hmm. So maybe you would look at those recommendations and make some modifications to this. And maybe you should come back.
I'm not sure what they have as far as involvement in this, but I'll certainly take a look at those. I kind of disregard their information or their participation in it, but you can go ahead and send that to me and I'll review it.
Yeah, Mike, I'd be happy to send you a copy of that in the morning.
Certainly.
So do we want to table this for now, or just not approve it for right now?
Just to jump in, if we were to table this application as proposed, we'd be reviewing these exact drawings. If you would like new drawings from Mr. DeLuca, it will have to be denied. To answer Phoebe's question earlier of does this have to come back or staff approving it, you guys also have the option to defer to chair and vice chair. Totally up to you if that's what you choose to do, but that option is on the table as well.
Okay.
I make a motion to reject it for resubmission next month with better drawings.
I'll second the motion. That's a good idea.
All right, Taylor, would you like to do a
Yep.
roll call?
Yep, Scott,
Yes.
Chris,
I'm voting to reject it, so that is a yes vote?
yes.
Yes, I'm voting to reject it.
Yep. John,
Yes.
Phoebe,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Vince,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
and Ed.
Yes.
Alrighty. So that carries. Mr. DeLuca, I'll be in touch via email tomorrow, and then you can resubmit for the October meeting, which I'll provide information on in my email.
All right. Thank you for your help.
Thanks. Agenda item number 12 is the Tyshevek property. I apologize that I said that wrong. At 322 Central Avenue in Glendon. It's a contributing structure in the Glendon County Historic District, MIP number BA799. The proposal is ex post facto approval for the replacement of original wood and wood-clad windows with vinyl replacements. The homeowners are seeking approval for the removal of original 2/2 windows and the installation of 1/1 vinyl replacements. The current property owners purchased the home in June of 2020 and were aware of the County Historic District designation. The home is a 1900 folk Victorian with some Queen Anne details. There's a narrative of the original windows and the conditions that they were in. However, no close-up or detailed photographs have been submitted to demonstrate the conditions. Based on photographs from the real estate listing, it appears that the majority of the windows on the main historic block of the house were original 2/2 wood sashes. The later enclosure on the side of the front porch also exhibits wood 2/2 sashes. The rear non-historic kitchen addition had casement windows, most likely vinyl or aluminum. The side bay window that faces Albright Avenue had wood 1/1 sashes. The homeowners have removed all of the windows in the house except the Queen Anne stair hall window and installed 1/1 double pane vinyl windows in their places. Additionally, they enclosed one window opening in the laundry closet for privacy, replaced a west side double casement window with a 1/1 sliding glass window, and expanded the window over the kitchen sink to make it a 1/1 sliding glass window. Our design guidelines very clearly state that historic windows must be repaired or replaced in kind, and that vinyl and metal clad replacement windows are not permitted to replace original wood or wood clad windows. Staff recommends that the vinyl replacement windows on the main historic block of the house be removed and new 2/2 with true divided or simulated divided light wood windows be installed back where they originally existed. Additionally, 1/1 wood windows be installed back in the bay window and third floor dormer. Staff recommends approval for the alterations and replacements made on the rear non-historic kitchen addition be accepted as completed, since it's the rear addition and not historic. The different window style and materials are a way to differentiate the non-historic addition from the main historic house. Staff's recommendation is to vote to 1, not issue a certificate of appropriateness or notice to proceed for the vinyl windows installed on the main historic block of the house. 2, vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the removal of the vinyl windows on the main historic block of the house and the installation of new 2/2 with true divided or simulated divided light wood windows back where they originally existed. 3, issue a certificate of appropriateness for the installation of 1/1 wood windows in the bay window and third floor dormer in order to rectify the issue. And 4, issue a certificate of appropriateness for the alterations and replacements made on the rear non-historic kitchen addition as completed. This is all citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, Windows and Doors, pages 2 and 6, and County Code Section 327403 and 327405.
It looks like the owner is here. Do they want to address it?
They are here. I will unmute them. All right, you're unmuted.
And tell them it's financially not feasible.
All right, you got.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question about, there was a comment about a dormer. What are we talking about? Are you talking about the attic window?
Yes, dormer on the rear roof slope where my cursor is. That's what we're referring to.
Yeah, the attic window was like in windows from the 80s. It was not original. Is it possible to amend that?
Staff just provided recommendations. The commission does not have to follow them based on their discussion. So that could be something that they can consider.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Let's open it up for discussion. Anyone have any comments?
Well, I'll say it's, this is Rob Brennan. It's unfortunate that you removed all these windows. You moved to Glendon recently because you most likely love the neighborhood. And part of the reason for that is because it's a Baltimore County, specifically a Baltimore County historic district, which is a highly restrictive historic district. The advantage there is that it encourages people to maintain their houses as they were built and get tax credit, historic tax credit as a benefit. You did choose to save one window, which was unique to the house, but all the windows were unique to the house.
I move we accept staff recommendation.
I second that.
If there's no further discussion, I'll go ahead and call a roll call. We had a motion from
No, I
Joan.
just had one question. Are the original windows, when they were removed, are they gone? So they can't be put back in?
We had safety concerns in the neighborhood, and
No, my question
they
is,
can be closed.
do those original windows that you had removed, did
No,
they
we don't
get
have them, no.
destroyed, or did you retain them and like store them in the basement or something? Are they available to be put back in or not?
No.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion from the commission?
From who?
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call vote then. Scott,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Phoebe,
Yes.
Phoebe,
Oh, yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yeah.
Vince,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
and Ed. Ed, you're muted.
Oh,
Now I can hear you.
Oh, yeah, I just unmuted you, Ed. So you're
yes.
good.
Alrighty, so that motion carries unanimously. Moving along, we have agenda item number 13. This is the Bear property at 4607 Prospect Avenue in Glendon. It's a non-contributing structure in the Glendon County Historic District. And the proposal is the removal of one car garage bay addition that is encroaching on the neighbor's property following an opinion and order from Baltimore County Board of Appeals. The property owner is seeking approval to remove an illegally constructed one-car bay addition on an existing garage following a June 7, 2021 opinion and order from Board of Appeals. In 2014, the property owner purchased the home, and in 2017 added onto the front of the home for a master suite, added a second garage, removed an existing fence and constructed a new fence. The work was completed without LPC review or proper building permits. The second garage extended several feet onto the property at 4605 Prospect Avenue, and the replacement fence extended onto the property at 4609 Prospect Avenue. The situation has been an ongoing dispute amongst the neighbors since and has been before the LPC, the Administrative Law Judge, and Board of Appeals. The homeowner is proposing to remove the one bay on the left side and restoring the garage to its previous condition. The left side of the garage will have two windows to match the original facade, and the garage will be re-sided with salvage siding from the removed portion. Any roof work will be completed in kind. In addition to the removal of the bay, the homeowner would like to cut the parking pad down by 2.5 feet so it does not encroach on the neighboring property, and would like to install a black metal railing along the edge of the parking pad for safety. This work will restore the portion of the home to its original appearance and will address the opinion and order from Board of Appeals. Because all work will be completed in kind to match the original, and the removal of the addition does not adversely impact the district, staff is accepting of the proposal and recommends approval. As a note, the Commission is not responsible for reviewing zoning issues and or the Board of Appeals opinion and order. The Commission is only tasked with confirming that the removal of this one bay addition meets the design guidelines. Staff's recommendation is to vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness, citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, additions and infill, and Baltimore County Board of Appeals opinion and order in case number 19342 SPHA, County Code section 327403 and 327405.
Thank you.
And it does look like the homeowner is online, so we'll let her speak first. And then we did receive some written testimony, which I'll read after.
Ms. Berry, you're unmuted.
Mrs. Blair, do you have any comments or statements you'd like to make? Hearing none. Any discussion?
Sorry, before we go into discussion, I'm going to read the written testimony received. This is from the property owners at 4605 Prospect Avenue. It says, "Good evening. We are Steve and Patty Fradkin, and we reside at 4605 Prospect Avenue, next door to the Bears. We are concerned that the work required by the court decision is going to be done improperly, or we are concerned that the work required is not going to be done properly and by licensed and bonding contractors. We want to remind you we are here because none of the proper procedures were followed in the first place. No permits, no licensed contractors. We want to make sure that it is clear that all of the garage, including the pad and complete foundation, on all added driveway and all of the air conditioning pads are removed for the court order. These items are an encroachment on our property. The setback is found to have been 9.5 feet. The garage foundation and additional pad and AC unit are all part of the construction that created the trespass. The property structure is to return back to the wall of the original single vehicle garage. The topography is to be returned to its pre-construction condition. Equitable relief, restore the property as it was prior to the violation. Failure to comply is a code enforcement citation. We know our neighbors, we know how they operate. Should the Bears request any type of addition, they can go through the proper channels as every responsible citizen of Glendon does. They can get the license and permits to go through the process as we do. Attached are the photos, which were included in the slideshow of the property front prior to construction and post-construction. Warm regards, Steve and Patty Fradkin. As a note, just a reminder, we are not commenting on actual issues. If there are issues once the work is completed that is still encroaching on the property next door, that will have to be referred back to code enforcement and the ALJ. That is not the LPC's decision. You are only focusing on the actual removal of the garage. And with that, I will turn it over to you all for discussion.
All right. Any comments, questions, discussion?
Since I think this is pretty clear, they've got to take the garage down, as Taylor said. This is outside of our, other than taking a look at it to make sure they do the job completely and correctly. It's got to come down. So I move we accept staff recommendations.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none. Taylor, can we do a roll call, please?
Yes, Scott?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Phoebe?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Vince? Vince, you're muted.
You're good to go.
There you go.
Sorry, yes.
Okay. Wendy?
Yes.
And Ed?
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. That motion carries unanimously. All right, we're in the home stretch, everyone. Agenda item number 14, the Dumbarton House. This is a Baltimore County Public Schools property located at 300 Dumbarton Road in Towson. It's final landmark number 119, myth number BA99. They're seeking the replacement of an oriented strand board plywood siding on the cupola with hardy panel stucco fiber cement. Baltimore County Public Schools is seeking approval to reside the cupola atop Dumbarton House. The cupola is located 4 stories up and is currently sided with plywood siding that requires maintenance and replacement annually due to rot, warping, and weatherproofing issues. Interior photos of the cupola were submitted to show the condition the plywood is currently in. In order to avoid making these repairs and replacements on an annual basis, the property owners would like to instead install hardy panel stucco fiber cement panels over plywood sheathing. This, combined with interior alterations to weatherproof, will require less maintenance over the years. The current plywood siding is not a high quality or a historic material, so staff is accepting of the proposal as is. The cupola is not highly visible, and the commission has supported non-wood materials for cupolas in the past. As a note, this is a county-owned property, which is why staff did not add the proposal to the consent agenda. However, staff feels it is appropriate for approval as proposed. Staff is recommending the commission vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness, citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, Facade Materials, page 7, and County Code section 327-403.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone here from the county that wants to speak about this?
It does not appear so.
Okay, let's open it up for discussion or a motion.
To describe the condition of the plywood siding on that cupola as the only problem with the cupola is understatement, but
Yes.
I agree with the replacement.
What kind of plywood is on the exterior now?
It's an OSB, which is the worst thing you could put on
Come on, Lord.
an exterior exposed.
Right. So the fiber cement board would make it tight enough that they wouldn't, they'd be waterproofing the exterior envelope of the whole structure.
It seems to have some sort of an arched detail. Is that original or authentic over the windows?
Yeah, I know it. It looked like something was mudded on, you know, like when you're putting compound up or something.
Looks to me like they just cut out some OSB in that shape and
Mhm.
nailed it up there, and because it's rippling the same as the other stuff. So, and Rob's right. I mean, there's all the trim pieces really ought to be redone and rethought. Otherwise, they're going to be right back in the same boat. Water's going to be infiltrating and rotting the backup and the structure of it.
Yeah.
But I think that the hardy material is much better than OSB. OSB is just, if it gets wet, it just dissolves basically.
I second. I think Chris made a motion, and I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion?
No.
All right, should we do a roll call?
Yep. Scott,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Phoebe,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Vince,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
and Ed.
Yes.
Perfect. Alrighty. Last agenda item to be voted on. Agenda item number 15, the National Bank of Cockeysville and Carriage House and setting the DeCourse property at 10914 York Road in Cockeysville. This is final landmark number 362, MIF number BA887. The proposal is exterior alterations to provide 2 methods of egress and associated site modifications per life safety code requirements. The property owner is seeking approval for life safety measures for the National Bank of Cockeysville. Measures include a 2nd floor egress exit to be located on the rear of the building, basement egress from an older opening that was filled in, and various site modifications needed because of the new exits. As a note, we are going to turn things over to Sanders Designs for a complete proposal, but staff recommends approval as proposed. The proposed alterations address the egress issues in the most appropriate way possible, considering the various site constraints. The 2nd floor exit is located on the rear of the building and is not very visible from the public right-of-way and does not impact the architectural or material integrity of the bank, where the front and sides have the most character. The basement stair utilizes an existing exit. The design of the retaining wall and railings are compatible with the character of the bank. Staff's recommendation is to vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness setting Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, porches and steps, additions and infill, and the National Park Service Preservation Brief number 32 on making historic properties accessible, and County Code section 327403.
Right, I'm gonna unmute Brandon and Tim Sanders.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Brandon, and Tim Sanders is on the call as well. I don't know if Tim, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Hello, panel.
We'll try to make this quick. I think that it was a very great description that we got from Caitlin and Taylor. Thank you very much for that introduction. So yeah, just give you a little context where we are on York Road. Next slide up on 10914. The property in particular has 2 or 3 buildings on it. You've actually seen the garage building in a previous iteration of this meeting. I want to say a couple months ago, and we're focused on the Cockeysville Bank or Cockeysville National Bank portion of it. So go forward. This is the original site, or one of the original site plans that we were able to obtain.
Hey, Brandon.
Yes.
I just wanted to let everyone know that I have Ed DeCourse on this presentation via the telephone, so he can hear us verbally, but not, visually. So I just wanted to let you know that. Ed, you're there, right?
Great.
All right, great. Everyone to know that. Thank you.
So we were able to pull up a couple of historic photos from various times in the past, and you'll see that the bank really hasn't changed much from what you'll see here in these black and white photographs of the main facade. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get shots from the side demonstrating the existing opening and access way to the doorway that we're going to be re-unearthing. Next slide, please. Existing conditions, these were shot a couple weeks ago. As you can see, the bank remains in its very similar state. There are a couple of signs on the exterior that have been approved. They're installed as approved. And then the building adjacent to us is actually connected in a sense to an addition that was constructed, I'm not sure when, but much later than the original bank was constructed. Next slide, please. These are views of the south-facing side, which is where most of the work will be visible from. You'll see it's not directly, but the basement egress will be roughly underneath of the east two windows, the one with the air conditioning in it, and then the rear egress out of the second floor, cross over the top of the rear addition, and then drop down to an existing egress door where we will pick up the egress from the first floor and then get everyone down to grade. Next slide, please. This is a shot of the rear of the building showing the original addition, and then an addition that was constructed kind of connects the two buildings and provides us with that egress. We will be replacing the door and the stair as part of this construction, but the rest of the building will remain as it is. More of the context, you can see the shopping center next to us, as well as this is an older photo of the mercantile use that's next to us here. Proposed site plan showing the rear stair coming down and kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, switchbacking down to grade. And then on the south side of the building, you can see the single run stair leading down to the basement with the retaining wall. The proposed floor plans, again, the basement is an existing opening. We're working with poured concrete floor. We're going to do a CMU retaining wall with a stucco finish to match the stone finish that's existing on the building, and we're looking at a powder coated galvanized steel guardrail at the top of the retaining wall that will match the style of the existing bars at the windows, which you saw on the photographs. And the stair at the rear of the building, which is kind of the larger of the two interventions, will have a new door cut into the east side on the second floor, and will basically stretch out, span over the addition, and bear on the existing original building, as well as columns that are running down to grade. And then the stair will turn and pick up that egress that exits out of the second addition that connects the two buildings, and then leads to grade. And I should mention the materials there. They're noted on the drawings, but we would be looking at the same black powder coated galvanized steel for all the metal materials that we have here. The door is intended to be similar to the original front door with the panelized, it'll be panelized hollow metal and color similar to some of the photos that you saw. And that's the basic run of it there. And we can take a look at the materials as we go through, and then you can see how minimal impact the basement stair, retaining wall, and guardrail will have on the front of the building and south side of the building, where, as noted, those are the main historic features of our building.
All right, thank you. Any discussion?
I have a question. This is Rob. In some jurisdictions, exterior fire stairs have to be covered with a roof. Do you know if that's the case with Baltimore County?
That is not the case for Baltimore County. And in fact, we've already gone through the building plans review phase of this in an effort to kind of move things along. And then we're now moving into the historic preservation phase to make sure we select the proper materials with you guys in mind.
I want to confirm that you're not going to need to cut into that rear cornice to install your door, that your diagram here is accurate for the head height of the door.
That is confirmed. If you flip to the next, one of the next slides, please. We have the interior shot there, and you can see, now this is obviously just a Photoshop version of it, but you can see where the window head is, and the required heights would be roughly aligned with the window heads on the interior and exterior.
My concern was that your walkway is actually above the roof level, right? So has that been taken into account?
Yes. So if you want to flip back to the elevations and zoom into the south elevation. So what we're planning on doing, and we have been working with a structural engineer but didn't provide those drawings, is having a 12-inch C-channel run out from the base of the building, get picked up by the columns, and within that C-channel, we will drop down one step as we continue out over top of the existing roof line. And this is our field verified second floor elevation as well as the roof elevation that we're looking at.
Thank you.
Sure.
I move we accept the staff recommendations.
I'll second the move.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to clarify that we're approving this for historical purview. We don't have purview over egress. This is not our decision about egress.
Understood. Thank you.
All right. Taylor, do you want to please do a roll call?
Yes. Scott?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Phoebe? Ray?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Vince?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
And Ed?
Yes.
Alrighty. With that, that motion carries unanimously.
And I just have one comment.
I do have one point of clarification. You had mentioned that the signs on the front of the building and the side of the building had been previously approved by Landmarks.
No, so they're not attached to the building. They're like temporary signs.
Temporary, okay.
Yeah, so they're not like drilled into the wall. They know that if they have any that are like permanent, they would have to get a sign permit anyway. But they are temporary.
I had a comment.
Go ahead.
Okay. And I think, was that Rob that just spoke?
Yeah.
Yes.
You stole my thunder, because I was going to say it's a shame that those signs are there.
But they are removable. I think they're attached to the security grill.
Yeah, like the
Like hanging off of them. They're not like drilled into anything.
Yep. Alrighty. If there's no further comments on that, with that, give all of yourselves a pat on the back. That was everything that you had to vote on and discuss tonight. I know it's been a long one. To go through some other business, we had 3 MHT and ER tax credits since our last meeting. The Hisley property at 1507 Bologna Avenue, which you reviewed additional work for tonight. They had emergency approval for the in-kind replacement of the roof and gutters following a home inspection. The Frederick property at 223 Morris Avenue, also in Lutherville, they had emergency approval for the in-kind repair and replacement of roof gutters and wood siding following storm damage. As a note, this work is in conjunction with an insurance claim, so only the homeowner's deductible is tax credit eligible. And then finally, the Roche property at 24 Windcrest Avenue in Catonsville, they had MHT approval for an in-kind roof replacement and the addition of an HVAC system. As far as other business goes tonight, the 2022 LPC schedule has been shared with you, so please make sure that you note those dates on your calendar so that we can see you all. We will keep you posted if the meetings are virtual or in person. Right now, we're continuing virtual meetings with the Delta variant, but as soon as we know more, you will know more. Second, an update on 7 Watt Avenue. At the July 8th, 2021 LPC meeting, it was brought up that they could have possibly completed work without LPC approval, so staff went through our records and we found that no work was completed without approval. There were some alterations done, however, they had a work approved a couple of years ago and the project was on the consent agenda, and all of the alterations completed were approved via the consent agenda at that meeting. So nothing to involve code enforcement on, and the update is there is no update, which is good news. And then finally, next month, we will be having a public hearing on the nomination of the Marble Lodge IOOF meeting hall at 10759 York Road in Cockeysville to the preliminary landmarks list. We do not expect it to be as contentious as tonight's meeting or for there to be as much public input, but just so that you have it on your radar, that will be held next month. And with that, that is all I have for you.
Well,
This is Rob. This is Rob.
Caitlin, for such good organization for a long meeting. I so appreciate it. And Ed, thank you for your keeping it all on track and pace. I so appreciate it.
Yes, I wanted to reiterate that as well, Ed. Thank you for helming the longest meeting that I've ever been.
Oh.
I was predicting worse, but it's
Oh.
longer. May not be worse, but
You should have been to some in the old days, Rob.
We
brought our jammies with us.
And I have to applaud you all. Every single commissioner that started this meeting with us is finishing it with us. And I'm very proud of you all for that. So thank you all for taking the time. I do know it was a long meeting, but we really appreciate you all hanging in there.
And I'd like to thank Caitlin. I thought the report on the first project was very well done and very informative. And I learned something at every meeting. It's really fun.
Very thorough.
Well, thank you. A majority of the research was done by Terry, and I just like piggybacked off it and like completed it. So she did all the legwork for the research by going to the archives and stuff. So.
Oh, you knew how to source.
But it was well put together and informative, and we understood it at the end. So.
Yeah, I just have one comment. I did notice that there were some updates to some of the, particularly the Bosley Mansion, with additional letters of support or against. Is it possible when there are updates that an email could be sent to the commissioners so that we know aware of those and look at those? I mean, I was able to look at them in the course of the meeting, but that can be distracting.
Sure.
Just so that we know, if I reviewed this, it took me a couple days to review all this stuff, and I budgeted time for that. But if there are updates, it's helpful to be made aware of them, to know that I do need to go back in and look at those.
Sure, sounds great.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, this was the first time we had this, I guess, virtually with a lot of testimony. So obviously, we get to learn for next time.
But yes, definitely something that we'll make note of, Phoebe. Great feedback. Thank you.
And with all that, then I move we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
We don't have to do a roll call vote on that.
No, I think we're
by acclamation.
All in favor?
Yay.
Anyone opposed? I didn't think so. You all have a lovely night. Thank you all so much.
Thank
have a
you.
great
Yes.
weekend.
Thank you, ladies. We appreciate it.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.